Wasn't loud enough. And scene.
Scene. Anyways, welcome back. Still in our hoodies.
Still.
Sale. If
Yes.
you would like one, Soup Comfco's. Soup, wonderful. Like, I feel like I got a hug. I'm in a
Same.
hug right now.
Like, I just want to lay on the couch and like snuggle with my sweatshirt.
I do. And
like, I don't need a blanket. I just have this. Like, I don't
Well,
even.
I want to have a blanket and then open the windows. You know, because it's gonna be chilly, but it's gonna feel like good spring air.
Yes.
Maybe not today though, because
It's cold out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's supposed to be full sun on Sunday and 35. I was like,
Okay.
could you just put it up a little bit though? I mean, hey, I'm here for the full sun.
Yep.
I'm here for it. All right. Episode 55.
Yes. I had to look. I was like, shit. Is it?
Like,
we literally just talked about it.
It's literally in front of me. ADHD. I hope you can hear the papers rustling.
Yes.
ASMR. Anyways, episode 55. Today we are going to talk about a subject, and I mean today me, are going to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart. So there are many different modes of therapy that you can do with somebody. You can do dialectical behavioral therapy. You can do cognitive behavioral therapy. You can do
family systems,
person-centered,
strength-based,
brief solution focus, motivational interviewing. And those all work for different things, and they all have their populations that they work best with or best served. So there is a trauma mode of therapy called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So I am certified in EMDR. You have to become certified. So some of those other modes of therapy we talked about, anybody can study it and kind of pick it up. You can also become certified in it because Steph and I will both be certified DBT therapists by summer.
Yes.
And I'm saying that right now so that somebody holds me accountable to get that training done. Because yikes, I haven't even finished my ADHD one. I'm like an hour away. But her soccer game practices went away, so then I stopped doing it. And now I'm like, Mari, Monday, it's over with. You have time, you're doing it. Anyways, whatever. Can't wait for this to come out and me be like, yeah, I already submitted my certification. So EMDR, you have to be certified to do it. So I went and got certified in December, or started in September of 2019 and then finished in December. So you go for a 3-day training, you take a break for 3 months because you're trying to implement the things and tools and tips and tricks that you've learned. And then you come back for the remaining training, which is like more so of EMDR with specific populations. And then like how to go forward, or maybe how to tailor it to maybe what your client needs. So EMDR is a process where it uses bilateral stimulation of the brain to reprocess traumatic memories. So when I'm saying bilateral stimulation, it's using your left and right brain. So typically, traditionally, EMDR was where somebody's hand would go back and forth in front of your eyes and you would follow their hand or their fingers or 3 fingers. It just kind of depends on what people like. Typically, I would use my whole hand.
I would do this. I'm just kidding.
What? Let me know what are you seeing?
Do you see my message? Do you see my message?
It? Can you see it? But typically, so you're sitting like ships in the night was her favorite saying, was the trainer's favorite saying. So basically, I'm sitting here and my client's face would be like right here. Not that we would be that close, but like I'm not
parallel to one another, right?
Yeah,
like you're not sitting
directly
face to face
in front of. Yeah. So I'm sitting off to the side and my hand is the thing that is parallel with my client. And so then you're just following it. So you're following it with your eyes, not your whole head. You're not shaking.
Yes.
So you're following it. And as you do that, it reprocesses the traumatic memory because the therapist is the person who is walking you through the already predetermined memories chosen to be reprocessed. So typically people seek out EMDR when they have had traumatic experiences in their life. I think the interesting thing that I liked was that it doesn't have to so the trauma and how you might remember it doesn't have to be actually what happened. So that is really cool, right? Because obviously over time, our memories change as we continue to pull them out and look at them. Our memories are changing. So it doesn't even matter if it was like a perceived threat and somebody's like, well, I almost lost my life.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what my thought is about it. It matters how that person has internalized it. So I thought that was really interesting. So you come to EMDR therapist and you choose these certain memories to reprocess. Usually traumatic memories could be anywhere from something as small as my cat went crazy and attacked me, or like to a car accident or sexual abuse, or, you know, sustained emotional abuse too. Something that isn't necessarily going to hurt you if it's someone's like, God, you're so stupid, but over a sustained period of time, that definitely wears somebody's self-worth down.
And when we say like small or big T or little t trauma, that's not to invalidate the experience.
Correct.
That's just the verbiage that we use to differentiate between events that were, you know, like humongous versus events that maybe were a one-time thing that didn't have such a big impact, right? Like that's how you explain it. Okay.
Absolutely. And again, it doesn't matter my interpretation of your trauma. It matters if your cat attacked you and you felt like you were going to fucking die, then that's what we go with. We don't go with me being like, well, how big was your cat? Like, and how big are you?
How
and
likely was it that you were going to die?
How old was the cat? Did the cat have nails? Like, we're not doing this victim shaming shit.
Did the cat have a gun?
Yeah. If you thought the cat was going to fucking murder you, then done. Point blank period. I'm like, that cat was going to kill you. Like, so it doesn't matter how I internalize it.
Yes.
As your therapist. So we go through this scenario of like setting up these memories to reprocess. So typically they say you either start with the first or the worst. How it was explained to me is that your brain is like a tree system, right? And so the roots are where the memories are stored. So if we're not necessarily going with the first or the worst, you could potentially be clearing part of the root, but then there's still some down here. So not that it has the chance to like re-traumatize you with a new traumatic memory, but there's still going to be some of that lingering emotional pull, and it's not going to clear all the way. The same way if you start EMDR and don't see it through to the finish, it's not going to be effective. It's not like talk therapy where you're coming and maybe you've come to a resolution at the end of the semester, at the end of the session. And you're like, okay, I feel like I have somewhere to go with this. The EMDR isn't always like that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you start with the first or the worst. So typically I like to leave it up to the client as to what their interpretation of the first or the worst is. However, so that's pretty much like what I let them choose. But I, as the clinician, am the person who gets to choose whether or not we actually do EMDR.
Sure. What would be a reason that you would not follow through with it?
So if I notice that a client does not have an adequate support system or adequate coping skills, or they're like in the frying pan right now, I'm not going to add more fuel to the fire by starting EMDR. Sure. You have to be in a somewhat decent headspace to be able to start. And so I understand that there's always going to be something in life that is coming up, right? We give merit though, and put more pressure, like we assign how much energy we're going to give something. Sure. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so yes, your job may be stressful as shit, but there may also never be a time where your job isn't stressful. Sure. So we have to understand how much merit am I going to give to this stressful job when I know that a lot of my stress at my work is being triggered by the past traumas that I've had. So yes, this is stressful. However, this is creating more stress. So I want to start reprocessing. But like if someone comes to me and is like, well, I don't have enough food to feed my family. I'm about to be evicted. I don't have a job. And like, I really just need to get through this trauma. Like you're on fire and I'm not adding fuel to that fire. That's not an appropriate time to start EMDR.
It's pretty unethical.
Yes. And I've had to turn people away. I've had to say like, I would really like for us either to really work on coping skills first and get you somewhat stable, and then we can start EMDR, or I would like you to be doing XYZ with your therapist. Because that's the other thing is that you can have two therapists for it. Like I can be your EMDR therapist and someone could go see you stuff. So like, while then I would be communicating with your therapist of like, hey, I really want you to work on, you know, maybe these coping skills or challenging cognitive errors with them, because some of those things come up when we're reprocessing, and EMDR isn't talk therapy.
Well, and I think it's important to note, and this is kind of a generalized statement, but typically in therapy, having two therapists at once is not encouraged. It's not encouraged because a lot of things can get lost in translation and muddled, and things can be used inappropriately, but this is something completely different, right? Like if we were sharing a client, and I've done this before, right? I've referred people for EMDR. I am working on the core things that are going on, right? So teaching them coping skills, teaching them distress tolerance, teaching them emotional regulation skills. So then when they go in to do the trauma work, it's not traumatizing, but
jarring,
so overwhelming. Yes.
Yeah. So there's that. So when people come in, then we set up the first or the worst, we start to reprocess. I typically, before I start reprocessing, do a couple of EMDR coping skills with them, which would be like safe place or calm place, whatever verbiage you like to use, light stream, or the spiral staircase. It just kind of depends on what the person likes. I've had a lot of people really like light stream, and maybe we'll eventually do that as like a PS episode where it's like a calming technique that you can go back to, or spiral staircase, because honestly, now that I think about light stream, it's kind of, it's interactive, so it wouldn't necessarily record well. Anyways, so I do a couple of those EMDR coping skills with them, teaching them that, and then we move on to reprocessing. So what reprocessing looks like, again, is that I, the facilitator, am going to help walk this person through the trauma that we've set up. And so we're setting it up in the sense that the way that trauma gets stored in our body as it's a negative cognition about ourselves. So somebody who might have been physically abused, their thought process might be like, it was my fault. I put myself in that situation. I should have, blah, 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 blah. So then I say, well, what does that say about you as a person? Well, like, I am not responsible, or I am not cautious, or I am not safe. And so then we find what would be the positive cognition. What would you prefer to believe about yourself instead of this negative cognition? So then I ask, how true does that positive cognition feel now before we start any of the reprocessing? They rate it, which helps me through our process to see where the rating is. And then I ask them to rate how disturbing the memory feels to them now. So usually it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, how true does the cognition feel is on a scale of 1 to 7. I don't know why, but whatever. So on the scales, then that's what helps kind of determine like where we are in our reprocessing, of whether it still has this emotional pull for somebody. So, and then we reprocess after we've got it to the point where it maybe feels like, okay, we're at a 0. Sometimes it's not a 0. Sometimes it's a 1 because of this, understanding that it feels like I can't give this memory a rating of 0 because it happened to me, and I can't take that away, and I undo it. Yeah. And saying 0 feels dismissive or like a disservice. Like I'm saying like, oh, it doesn't matter. So there's that you can allow, or there's like a blocking belief that you might have to set aside, or another memory coming in that you might have to container again. And that would be something separate to reprocess. So then the last part of the reprocessing is that trauma is stored in your body as well. So your body remembers. So you have to then help them remove the trauma from their body. And so sometimes it can look like crazy things have happened, right? And this is not typical. I've reprocessed with a lot of people. I've never had anybody do any of these things. However, like some people throw up, some people pass out, some people scream, some people like just fall out and lose control of their body. Like those things do happen. I have had people have weird arm twitches or leg twitches until we reprocess the memory out of their body, that their leg just kind of goes into like a shaking or a bouncing, or their hands do movements. It just kind of depends on what they're going through. But typically it's usually gone by the time that it has to be gone by the time that we're reprocessing. Otherwise we wouldn't consider that a successful reprocess. Sure. So reprocessing a memory can take anywhere from 20 minutes or 20 sessions. It just kind of depends on how I think a naive statement would be like how much you want that to be gone. But like part of me feels like that also does drive the process of like how ready you are for this change to take place. But like also the severity and how you determine the severity of that situation, right? Like, so somebody who maybe had repeated sexual abuse over a 10-year period, it's not like that is not going to be gone in a session. Like that's going to take some time to reprocess. It's also going to take us some time to build up those coping skills to make sure that you're okay to go into reprocessing. So there's no time frame, right? There's no suspected like, oh, okay, like this is, you know, get 3 sessions and you're out of here. So that is reprocessing. So then we store in the positive cognition and marry it with the rating that you're giving it of like, okay, a 7, I feel really solid in this positive cognition. I definitely feel this. I think the other thing to point out is that EMDR is bringing an understanding of your adult self and your adult brain to what happened. And so a lot of the times I'm reprocessing childhood trauma, but also you can reprocess like emergency protocol. Like if somebody is to get into a car accident and it's really horrific and they're having flashbacks, like we're just bringing your rational brain now that is out of the trauma to that situation. Sure. So it's not just like your adult brain too, but it's your rational brain. So the interesting thing is we were doing the anxiety masterclass. And so I was like looking up how EMDR like works in the brain, right? And like what it actually does, right? Because I knew it was the bilateral stimulation. So bilateral stimulation, again, you can use your hand. People have light bars. I have TheraTappers and the headphones that do the dinging in the different ears, or the TheraTappers are like little paddles that you hold and they buzz in each hand. So it uses bilateral stimulation, but I went a little bit further. So the left side is being prevented, the left side of your brain is being prevented from soothing your right side. So the bilateral stimulation helps prevent, helps release that area that's been stuck and helps allow the left side to then soothe the right side. So what is interesting is, so when traumatic things are happening, your limbic system comes online. It's the part of your brain that lights up and becomes activated, releasing stress responses. And so cortisol is released. And so the amygdala then tells the adrenal glands to produce more adrenaline. And that's where we start to get in this fight, flees, fawn responses. So what happens is your amygdala can assist in learning about the situation, but because you are so stressed out, that cortisol shuts down your hippocampus, which then skews the way that the trauma was remembered. So instead of being able to be like, okay, like I was a kid, blah, 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 like I can, you know, it wasn't my responsibility to keep myself safe, you know, blah. And like, then you can have that understanding, like you know, I was a kid, I should have kept myself out of that situation. I'm at fault. You know, I put myself in that situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So by using EMDR, it helps that part of your hippocampus stay open while you're reprocessing to help refile that trauma with more understanding as to what happened. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Sorry, potential spam person wants to talk to me. So that is EMDR. I think it is one of the coolest experiences. When I was getting trained, you have to go through reprocessing something yourself. And so I chose my daughter when she was younger, when she was 11 months, had a febrile seizure. And at that time, we didn't know it was febrile seizures. So she had one at 11 months and then one again at 13, almost 14 months. So there's like a 3-month difference in between. And febrile seizures are when the fever gets out of control and your body has a seizure to bring the fever down, calm yourself down. I don't really know how that works. I'm not a medical doctor. So that, I mean, Google it. So she had a seizure and I was the person who was home alone with her. My husband at the time was at an army training. And so when I would remember or recall this memory, it would feel like I was right in that trauma again. It would feel like all of those emotions that I had that night when it happened were brought right back to the surface. I could remember everything. And it was like, going in blips, right? And like flickers of like movie screens of like how it happened and like what I did and what was going on. So I reprocessed that because it started to turn into compulsions for me, right? Like, so I started to ask my daughter anytime that she wasn't like in my eyesight or that she sounded funny, I would ask her if she was okay, or I'd be like, Sophie, are you okay? And it started to get to the point where I was asking her like every 5 minutes. It was just getting to the point where it was really not like causing a giant rift in my life, but to the point where she was like, Mom, why do you keep asking me? Mm-hmm. Like, cause she was like 5 or 6, 19, it's 20. Yeah, she was like 4 or 5. And so she would ask me like, why are you asking me, Mom? Like, you just asked me. And I was like, oh shit, I did. Whoopsie. Like, so when I went to reprocess it, I had come, like the way that my brain led me through the process is that I had come to have this understanding and empathy for that. I was so scared. Like I was so scared in that moment because I'm not a person who is really effective in emergency situations like that. Like I can handle mental health and trauma all day long, but when it's like a medical trauma and like something medically has to be done, because it's out of my control, I get so like worked up. So it had come that I just had like empathy and understanding and feeling like, not that I was responsible, but feeling like I could have done more, I should have done more, I should have known, or whatever it may be. So I reprocessed it and came to the understanding of just having this empathy for myself and how scared I was. And so now instead of viewing that memory as like I'm in it, I view it like it's a picture or like a movie, like I'm watching it happen. And so instead of like flickers, I can watch the whole memory go by. Like doing the EMDR brought back some of those pieces where maybe my brain compartmentalized it because it was a very stressful, traumatic moment. So now it's like a movie and I could run through the whole thing as to what happened and like what went on and how I felt. And it's wild because it was 20 minutes of something that I'd carried for 4 years that I was just like, okay, enough. So it was really cool. I started then the second time we went back, we had to start again. And I started working on my flight anxiety, but that is to be continued.
You know how we talk a lot about, you know, when clients are not ready to change, we have to have those difficult conversations, right? Of like, what are we doing? This, I feel like, is a much more sensitive topic. So what happens when you are working with a client and the EMDR is not working because they are just not there yet? Like, how do you talk to them about it?
I just have a conversation with them and help them to understand that there's no right or wrong time to do EMDR. And it's just because you might not be ready to fully go into the emotions of the trauma, because that is the purpose of EMDR. You have to bring that memory up, you have to recall it, and you have to be in it to reprocess it. You have to feel those emotions again. I can't re-traumatize you. I can't fuck up the memory even more. It's just like, you have to feel that. And sometimes people aren't ready for that, and that's okay. But it's having that like empathetic conversation of like, it's okay if you're not ready right now. I understand that it's creating a lot of stress and anxiety for you. What is going to cultivate more stress and anxiety is you forcing yourself to do something that you're not ready for yet. So how do we work on putting out some of the hypervigilance or the like somatic symptoms? How do we get some coping skills for those things that are like bringing up everyday life? Like you constantly have a stomach ache, you constantly have a migraine, you constantly have these things. And we know that there's no medical issues going on. That really is probably, you know, symptomology of your trauma. Let's work on those things first and getting more stable coping skills in a rotation before then we start again. It's always going to be there. And that's what I like let them know. It's like, it's always going to be there. This is a journey you could take at any point in your life. It's not like you only have this window.
And my only other question was, you know, we know how it feels to work in a highly acute and stressful job, right? We used to hear like literally the most horrific stories ever, and it involved children, and that takes an emotional toll. Does doing EMDR take a similar emotional toll, or is it are you more in your rational brain when doing it because like, you know how the process works? Does that make sense?
For me or for the client?
For you.
No. I would say that it cultivates more of a response.
Okay.
And so you have to be very mindful about how you engage or interact, because you're seeing people at their worst.
Sure.
Like sure, people can call it memories and discuss like in an intake session of like some of the things that they went through, but like I'm watching them relive it. Like they are literally going through it. And so like there have been many, many times like I did EMDR with a client and we were reprocessing some very, very, very heavy stuff. And there are moments, man, where I was like, don't fucking cry, don't fucking cry, don't fucking cry. Cause it's heavy. And I don't think I'll ever get used to that as trauma, right? Of like understanding how awful the world can be. I don't think that will ever shock me. Or like, I won't ever be shocked by it. Like, I think I've heard the worst, and then somebody comes in and is like, hold my beer. Like, and it's like, holy shit. But that's why I've always wanted to do trauma work. That's why I I love EMDR because it helps remove the emotional pull from the memory, right? So in the grand scheme of things, the reason people do EMDR is that so they don't have that emotional pull from the memory. I'm not erasing the memory. The memory will still be there. You develop an understanding.
You're not controlled by it anymore.
Correct. You develop an understanding and then you're able to file it in your brain properly, more effectively than how it has been stored. And so I love what I do so that people understand that they're not alone in this and that this doesn't have to be their burden forever. It doesn't have to be your entire identity. So I do EMDR in person. That's how I prefer to do it. Sometimes people can disassociate because you are going into traumatic memories and there might have been disassociation in those memories that they're reprocessing. And so they might disassociate. So then that way, if they're in person, I have the ability to recall them and bring them back of like, okay, your feet are on the ground, look at your hand, what age is your hand, and like, look around the room, find one thing that's blue. Like, so being able to get them back. I have never had to do that with somebody. So I know that could probably sound really scary, but I've never had to do that with somebody. And I've had some people who've had some pretty significant trauma. So that is far and few between, I would say.
Sure.
But some people do it over telehealth. I don't, but some people do. So there is that too. If you're living in kind of a rural area, that you could find somebody online who does it as well. Sure. But make sure they're certified. Do not be afraid to ask for their certification or just to see their certificate. I have mine on my wall so people can see it, just because it's a very, very, very heavy, sensitive topic and something you're trusting somebody with. And so you want to make sure that they are doing what they say they're doing or that they're qualified to do it. So by all means, you are the client. You're the one who's ready. And if at any point in time you go into EMDR and you think you're ready and then recognize that you're not, it is 1000% okay for you to say, I'm not ready for this. And I need to put a pause on this.
Yep.
The therapist might question you a little bit and ask you like, okay, what's going on? What's showing up for you? But realistically, you are in the driver's seat. I can't force somebody to do EMDR. Even if I think it would be best for them, I can say that, but like they have to choose to want to do it. I can't be like, this is what we're doing.
Right.
So yeah, I love EMDR, man. It's so good. So if you guys have any questions about it, feel free to message me. I am at BEA_XO11. Any other questions, concerns, comments, let's talk. Steph is at SpookyFitMom13. We are at Rewriting Her Story Podcast. We are at rewritingherstorypodcast@gmail.com and Rewriting Her Story Podcast on YouTube. So if you have any topics you want covered, let us know. We would love to answer any questions that you have. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.